Hi everybody, it's Daniel with Ukulele Projects. I'm sorry about the delay in the videos. It took a while because I was coordinating with the owners of USpace to borrow a stock version of what was my original ukulele, which I'll be showing you later. It still is my ukulele. I mentioned in my last video that it was a source of great joy and then heartbreak and then great joy again. You'll understand all that as this video goes on. I'll try to make it as short as possible, but it's not going to be a super short video. Anyway, my first ukulele was an Islander MST-4. My wife purchased it for me for my birthday. That day, down at USpace, I tried ukuleles ranging from, say, $70 all the way up to over $1,000. And after trying 20 some odd instruments, I had narrowed it down to 3. And those 3 were just really special to me in terms of the way they played and the way they sounded. They were the Islander MST-4 by Ukulele. They were the Romero Creations, what is it? Oh yeah, laminate mahogany spruce top and the grand tenor, and they were the Romero Creations all solid mahogany grand tenor. And my wife said that she would get me any one of the 3. Now she happened to be getting herself that Romero Creations, solid mahogany, no, laminate mahogany spruce top grand tenor. She has a background in classical music, and so I really liked the Romero Creations solid mahogany grand tenor, and I really like this one. I liked all 3 of them. However, what I did was I played each of them with her playing the one she was getting. And I decided to go with this Islander because it had just a sparkle to it that really went well with the ukulele my wife was getting. And it also just sounded wonderful by itself. And so that was a source of great joy. There were a couple of niggling things with it. Jason wasn't in at the time, and he's one of the owners and also does all the tech stuff. And so I, at the time, like the saddle I noticed was a little crooked, but back then it was actually the first ukulele I really started working on. I looked up what to do, and I realized, oh, that's really easy. I've been working all my life, sanding the bottom of a saddle down to nothing. And so I sanded it down, adjusted the action, then it felt really good. However, my particular instrument had some issues that most people wouldn't notice because most people weren't raised in a high-end finishing business. There were a couple little spots on it that had tip splatter. And they weren't in noticeable spots. They weren't like on the soundboard. They were like in just odd spots. And what tip splatter is when you're spraying with the spray gun, the finish is coming out. It's being pushed out, through force through the nozzle. But you have to understand, finish is very adhesive. It has that properties of what it has to stick to the stuff you're spraying it to. And so as it's going out, any air-cured finish is going to be drying as it comes out of the nozzle. And so if my fingers are like the nozzle, as the finish is spraying out, little bits of the finish are instantly drying and building up on the sides all the way around the nozzle. And what happens is when you're spraying, if you're spraying in production, you'll be spraying and you just have to make second nature. Like in one of those passes, you quickly just touch it to tip of the gun like that. Get rid of the buildup so you don't have it basically getting so heavy it splatters onto what you're spraying. Well, mine had this tiny bit of tip splatter on it, and most people would have never noticed it, but I didn't. I would mention it to my wife periodically, and finally one day she said, well, why don't you just fix it? So I thought, well, yeah, why not? So I did. I wanted to change the color. It's not a bad color, but because it's mahogany, I wanted it to be a little more red, so I put a slip glaze on it. Then I overcoated it. And mine in particular has really spectacular grain on the back. And actually, you can't see it with this flat lighting, but this instrument here really has potential to pop if it was turned into a gloss instrument. It's just really nice. You've got these 2 little bird's eyes here. It's nice book matching in the back, and there's a lot of figure. There's a lot of figure in this mahogany on the top. But that's what I do with mine. I made it really high gloss. Now that same day when we were down there, Patrice, one of the owners, showed us 2 Spalted Mango Romero Creations grand tenors. And you know, knowing wood the way I do, and we just loved those 2, we knew that we would never see those 2 again. Yeah, they would get more Spalted Mango, but not those 2. Spalted Mango can change in color so much. And what a lot of people don't realize with Spalted Mango is that it not only changes in color, but the sound can vary a bit because that spalting is incipient wood rot. That's where you get all that patterning. And we really love those 2. So that year I put a layaway on them and did a lot of extra work to be able to get those for us. And then over time, as I was playing my Islander in the mornings, I'd set it up as my high G instrument, and playing my Romero, I noticed, you know, the neck on the Romero is so much thinner, and you can feel the vibration of playing, and you just get more resonance. So I made another modification to my Islander. I actually made the neck thinner. And so once it was thinner, it just played so much nicer. It actually gave a little more resonance to the instrument, and I was very pleased with what I had done. See, it's all joy, right? It's all joy. I haven't got to the heartbreak part yet. So then I'd done all this work on it, and I decided, well, you know, I just got this inexpensive gig bag. I'm going to get a nice case for it. So that's what I did. I got a more durable case. This case right here. It's nice. It's sort of like the Romero Creation cases. It's basically, it's styrofoam, but it's hard. And I thought it would be better protection. Famous last words, right? It was better protection if you don't do something stupid like me. What happened was this. One night I was hydrating all of our ukuleles, and I went to put them away. And see, I know this one's not zipped now because I'm about to show you my instrument, but I can't believe I did this. I picked it up thinking it was zipped. Well, it wasn't zipped. It worked like a catapult. It launched my ukulele about 5 feet in the air. Time just stood still as I watched it fall onto our bamboo floor in the bedroom and go splat. It was cracked so bad. It was sort of destroyed. And I'll put some pictures up so you can see just what happened. And you can see that's the heartbreak part of the story. My wife was in the room at the time, and she was reading, and she was like, oh my Daniel, I'm so sorry. I was practically in tears. And I said, you know, Donna, that means so much to me. You gave it to me for my birthday. And I texted Jason, sent him a picture, and I said, my ukulele had a boo-boo. Boo-boo. As you've already seen from the pictures, it was a lot more than a boo-boo. And he said, well, you know, we can always, you know, work out a really good deal for a new one. I said, oh, I'm gonna make this an Islander like no other. So he texted back with a smiley face. He said, well, I know you know someone that's really good at doing that. And I said, yeah, this is going to be an Islander like no other. So what I did was I decided, okay, this is really precious to me. I had already changed the color. I'd already reprofiled the neck. I'd done all these other things to it. So I decided I'm going to start from scratch, and I was going to strip it down completely. I texted, Jason, Jason and Patrice own U-Space. They're just wonderful people. I texted Jason and said, hey, Jason, could you find out if Cunnelea could, if you could get some original Islander decals from Cunnelea, because I have an idea. I really want to make my ukulele special. And so he checked into it, and he found out that he was able to get some water slides for me. I told him if he couldn't, that's okay, I would just inlay something, but I wanted the inlay to be a design, and I wanted the original Islander on it. And so that's what I did. But what I'll be showing as I'm talking is pictures of the project. The first thing I had to do was glue the top back together, and this required cleats. And I had to make cleats and then, use a wire to pull them through. And I'm not going to show all of that because the video is just going to be way too long. But I will show, you've seen pictures of the brakes. I'm going to show pictures now of when it was cleated and it was pulled together. It had to be done in stages. First I had to pull the cracks together, then I needed to glue the back in place. there was one spot that was the way the break was shaped. It was like one angle went down like this. Actually, no, the piece that was below went up like this, and so the piece above it, it couldn't come up. And so I actually spliced a little piece of wood to fill that gap so that when I finish it, it will at least be the right color of wood. Stripping an instrument's really tricky because you can't use a water-based remover, which a lot of stores sell. It will destroy the instrument. You can't use, well, in California you can't anyway. If you live in a state that has like methylene chloride or other types of strippers like that, you can't use those. Those just eat right through the celluloid binding. So I did find a remover out here that works passably well. It's slow. It's not like the benzene I was using as a kid, which is highly carcinogenic and also causes birth defects and whatnot. But, you know, we didn't know back then. I was just in business. They stopped making that in '73, by the way. But then they switched to methylene chloride, but that's super caustic, and now that's not legal in California. And so I've been using like a clean strip stripper. Now, clean strip itself is rather dangerous because it is basically xylene, and they brought benzene back because it's, I guess, better to put a little cancer warning on the container than the dealing with the caustic nature of methylene chloride. However, xylene, I'm going to say this is a public service announcement. Any of you that ever use Goof Off, that's xylene. The xylene-based removers, if you look at the MSDS sheets, that's the material safety data sheets. Now, when I was running my business, I had to have material safety data sheets on every chemical in the business. If you look at material safety data on acetone or other things, it'll talk about, you know, if you don't have proper ventilation, you can get sick, you can have these different problems, you might need to go to the hospital. If you look at the material safety data on xylene, it basically says, if you don't have proper ventilation, this can kill you. So, no joke, they don't actually use that word, it just says, you know, the consequences are death. So if you're ever working with Goof Off, if you're ever working with I think the clean strip spray stripper or their version of stripper, and any stripper, if you look in the ingredients and it's xylene, you make sure you wear a mask and you make sure you use it outside, because the consequences of having those chemicals in too high a concentration is the hereafter. It's no joke. If you don't believe me, look up the material safety data sheet on xylene. Anyway, that's an aside. So I'll put up a photo that shows what the ukulele looked in process of being stripped. You can see it's a very messy process. I will say something real quickly. When I strip an instrument, I never use any kind of metal tool like I would have used stripping furniture or something. And the reason for that is if you're not using a stainless steel tool, the metal can actually cause a gray stain on the wood. And so what I do is I use like the plastic paint scrapers after I've sanded the edges so they're rounded so I cannot put any scratches on the top. And also, you know, stripping an instrument, you have to take great care that you're stripping a delicate instrument. You just can't be pushing on it. You have to let the stripper do its work. It's, you know, it's one of those things where in and out, just don't do it. You're better off just cleaning it up and just leaving your instrument. But anyway, since I did have experience with this, I stripped the instrument completely. I stripped off the headstock, the Islander. I got it all down to bare wood. And the reason I did that was because I decided that since this instrument has a rosewood fretboard, rosewood bridge, I would make a rosewood faceplate for it, a proper faceplate, rather than just like a mahogany veneer that was on it. And then I was going to put a nice inlay into the faceplate. And since I was putting an inlay into the faceplate, I didn't want to have the Grover tuners sticking out. They're nice tuners, but I didn't want to have these knobs competing with what I was planning on putting inside the faceplate. So what I did was got it all stripped. I got some inlay material, faceplate material. I think I got it off of Amazon. Anyway, it was quite thick. I had to hand plane it down to the right thickness. And I made a nice design, which you'll see in a few minutes.
once that was taken care of and I went to finishing it, I know that Ukulele uses UV coat finishes. So I thought, well, why don't I, UV coat, UV cure finish. So I thought, well, why don't I try UV cure finish on this? Now, the issue with UV cure finishes is to work them really well, you really need to use UV curing lights. There's one particular brand, I won't mention their brand because their product really only works just okay. They say that it will cure in 5 to 10 minutes in good sunlight. And I found that it would cure well enough to sand, but it really wouldn't cure well enough to buff properly. So I actually had to get some LED light, make an LED lighter. I spent about $100 making a lighter to get the finish to cure. Now I used the sealer that it had because it's really unique in that I wanted to have a glassy finish like I'd done before, but rather than spraying and sanding, building it up and sanding it down for a long period of time, since I did that as an overcoat on an existing open pore finish, I started with this UV Cure sealer because what happens with UV Cure, they don't have solvent. The cross-linking molecules that go into the finish actually react to light, and that's what gives it the hardness that it needs for either the filler or the finish. And as a result, it builds up, it hardens, and it doesn't shrink. So you put it in and it doesn't shrink at all. I've seen in ukuleles by, you name any of the major brands, the finishes look real nice, except for Ukulele. I take that back because they do use a UV Cure finish. But the companies that use solvent-based finishes, even if they buff them super smooth, nobody that's making the ukuleles in production has the time to let that finish sit for a couple months to really cure properly, to sand and buff it again after it's shrunk a little bit. So I've seen literally, $3,000, $3,500 ukuleles that had a mirror finish, but a year or so later, you can see where the grain is. You can see the dips where the grain is. It still looks shiny, but you can see those spots, and that's because of just the nature of a solvent-based finish. UV Cure finishes help fix that, but they have other problems. And one of those problems I had to fix because the finish wouldn't buff to where I wanted it to go. It should be super glassy. It was super optically clear when it was sprayed before you do anything, but once it's sanded and stuff, it lost something. So anyway, I've talked all this time. I will show you my ukulele. After I show you my ukulele, I will also show photos. I took some photos of both of these next to each other, and I also took a photo where you can see the labels, so you can see that what I'm about to pull out actually is an Islander by Ukulele MST-4, just really pimped out. So this is my pride and joy. This is what my wife gave me, and this here, you can probably see a little line where the worst of the cracks were. But this here has an absolutely glass finish. I'll put some photos up that will demonstrate that. And what I did for the headstock was make this 2 palm tree inlay into the rosewood. And what it is that the sand is white mother of pearl, the trunks are gold mother of pearl, and the palm fronds are abalone. And the abalone then goes along with the abalone down in the rosette. And this thing here, it had wonderful sound before. I'm holding it right-handed. Picked up probably, I'd say, 10 to 15% more resonance on all the higher strings, and the C is about 50% more. I don't know that the mic can pick that up. But if I hit the C on this one, give it a good hard hit. That's not bad itself. But because this is a high G instrument, that droning C is really important for a lot of chord melodies.
So there are pieces in like I'm going through James Hill's Ukulele Way, but I go back to certain pieces that I want to memorize, and one of the ones I've been wanting to memorize is called Long Long Ago. I won't play it right now because the second I said it, my fingers are going to turn all thumbs. But there's one part where you have to hit the C and then you play certain sequence of notes, and before you finish off, it's really nice to have that C continuing to drone. And I was never able to get it prior to this being broken. And one of the reasons I've got it now is since I had to strip it completely, and I know what the bracing is like in here. The Ukulele uses their typical, 3-fan brace with the 2, braces around the sound hole. I knew I had a lot of wood to spare on top. So since I took the bridge off to strip it, I sanded this thing way down to really enhance the resonance of the instrument. And also, when I'm playing, I made the neck significantly thinner. Now, from the time that I originally profiled it to the time that I had to fix it after the boo-boo that it had, I got another ukulele, which is my Kola KTM00, and I noticed that Kola has a much more straight neck than even the Romero. It doesn't go as thin up at the top, but it's real straight down this way. I really like that. So I left it the same thickness here, but since I stripped it again, this area here I made thinner. So it has a much more comfortable feel, and it's tailored exactly to me, and it's just got such a wonderful sound. And I said, this video is going so long, I'm not going to take time to play it, but that's my instrument. This is the story. This is one instrument that was a source of so much joy and then so much self-inflicted heartache by lifting this case, not knowing that it wasn't zipped, and it went like that, and threw my instrument into the air. And when it crashed on the side, then I decided I would stain it. Now one other thing I will mention is I did create some heartache for myself intentionally. I wanted it to be this nice, deep, in this lighting it looks sort of brownish, but it's sort of a red color. The grain on the back of this is spectacular, and I'll put some photos, and I tried to do a video where I shined a light to show how much it changes. But if I can get the photos to work, they'll be in this. Well, the photos, you'll see the photo, but if I can get the video edited well where you can see the grain change, I'll add that little video section too. But what I did want to do to make the grain really pop is I stained it with just like a Minwax red mahogany stain prior to filling it. Now that's a big challenge, because if you're staining the instrument before you put the filler in it, then you can't just sand back all the way to the wood, because you're going to sand through the stain. It takes a lot more care and discipline to be able to get everything just right. But that's what I chose to do. I better not hold that there because I got a bunch of junk piled over there. You might see it in the video. But anyway, this is my instrument. I'll just do this one little part. It's and once again, it comes from Ukulele Way. I'm only going to do just a couple strums, because it just shows one of the things I love about this instrument. It was like, I think it's called, Acadian Lullaby, but it starts up by going. I just love the way this thing sounds. I love the way the C's still going. I just love the way it just carries the songs that I play. It just sounds so nice. Mahogany and Spalted Mango are my 2 favorite tone woods, and this is hands down the most precious ukulele to me. It was the one my wife gave to me. It's the one that my stupidity almost ruined, and it's the one that with a bit of love and care was turned into a wonderful instrument again. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I've got it'll be a shorter video next time, and it'll be a surprise. I won't say what it is. It's going to be a surprise on a couple levels. But anyway, as I said, thanks again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep playing ukuleles. They bring joy to life. That's what I feel about it, at least. Take care.